Well, hello. How are you doing today, or tonight, or this evening, or whenever it is that you're watching the show? Let me ask you a question. Is fear holding you back? Is fear holding you back? It's an interesting question, right? I think we'd like to say, oh no, fear is not holding me back from anything, but I would venture to say, no matter what level you are, no matter what you're trying to do in life, when you try to do something new, fear will get in the way. And today's show is about this very thing. Well, my name's Lori Raup, and I am the host of Your Message Matters. And I'm so grateful that you are here today because I love sharing what I'm learning, and I've been pretty observant in a few areas, and one of them is in the Facebook group, Write Your Book Now, Authors Helping Authors. And today's show came out of a post that was in this group that I thought had such value because it happens to all of us. Even if you say that you are not really experiencing fear right at the moment, that you know what your next best steps are, at some point, fear will hold you back. And what are you going to do about it? Well, I want to share what I've learned about this valuable topic today. So this post that I saw recently was, well, let me just read it to you. I'm not going to give names or anything. If you're in that Facebook group, you'll see this post and you'll also see the response. But if you're not, well, hello, you better get in there. So the post reads like this. I've been pretty quiet lately, right? Well, I've been deep in the trenches of writing. And guess what? I finished not one, but 2 books. 2 books, that's a lot. No wonder he's been quiet, right? I finished not one, but 2 books that have been on my mind and in my heart for the longest time. One is a collection of poems I've been thinking and tinkering around or tinkering with for, can you believe it, 30 years. Well, yeah, I can believe it. It's like a patchwork of moments, feelings, and thoughts I've gathered while strolling through life. I love the way he puts that. This guy is clearly a writer. The other book is a self-help book, kind of my personal life manual, if you will, based on these 8 big ideas I have lived by. What are we doing? Here's the thing, though. Now that they're done, I'm suddenly hit the brakes. I wrote them for me, really. It was like talking to myself, trying to make sense of things. So the question that has been nagging me is, should I even publish them? Well, of course I'm going to say yes. Well, maybe not. It does depend. I wouldn't say yes to all books, but I'm thinking I would say yes to this one. But he says, should I even publish them? Should these really personal reflections be sent out into the world? Have you ever felt this way? He continues to write. That moment when you're not sure if your very personal creations should stay your own, or if you should share them with others. I would love to hear your thoughts or any advice you might have. Thanks. And then he also has a working copy of the cover of his second book that he puts ... which might change. And it may. I love it. So I responded to him and I said, like you, it took me over 30 years to write my first book, Create Butterfly Moments, after being told I should write a book that I am always talking about. And that's a true story. In fact, we just got the author's copy from one of my other authors I'm working with, and I took it to her home yesterday. And oh my goodness, I'm going to write a blog about that whole experience. So stay tuned for that. Back to his post, or actually my response to his post. Everything in its proper time. Some may say that old imposter thoughts come out at a time like this, and I think they do. It could also be the vulnerability that is exposed in your writing. Let me say, There are amazing things ahead when you break through the hesitation. It's time, your time. Then he responded back to me saying, Lori, Ralph, you are absolutely right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So, what would get you over the hump? What would get him over the hump? What happens to us when we are doing good in the world and all of a sudden you hit the brakes because what? Fear sets in. That's all it is fear. I personally don't believe that you are called to write something to never publish. Now, here is the thing though. There could be some things within the body of your work that should not be in there. And there are many reasons not to do that. Number one would be to get yourself into legal trouble. There are some things you don't want to do, but in general, setting those kinds of things aside, let me say yes. So what is the issue here? Well, let me tell you. There is a fact that is about our brain. Our thoughts drive our behavior, and therefore, fact number 2 is to change our behavior, we have to stop our thoughts. We have to think differently. This is addressed in biblical times. I mean, how long ago was the Bible written? And it says you have to be renewing your mind. Well, how do you renew your mind? You have to change your thinking. You have to reframe things. Let's talk about how we can overcome some of those fears and get results. I think first you have to understand, what kind of fears do we face? Let me say this. Fears take on many, many forms. It's almost like a vapor that you can't quite get your hands around. It's not like something tangible, like a book. This book is tangible. You can hold it, you can hit it, but your fears aren't like that. They're really hard to wrap your head around sometimes, and it's really hard to get to the root of them. But you don't really have to get to the root, I mean. There are things you can do to move ahead. So, what kind of fears might you be facing? The big one, I think, is a fear of rejection. And this happened with one of my authors. It made me feel so sad. She wrote 4 books in a year. That's a lot, and it's an accomplishment. I don't care how you look at it. She was driven, she got it done. And after the first book was finished, before she had done the rest of the 3 books she did that year, we made her book a bestseller on Amazon. That gave her the right, doesn't mean she has to use it, it gave her the right to say her book was a #1 best-selling book on Amazon. She could have qualified it for the category it was in. It actually went #1 in multiple categories. She had a tribe that was supporting her. So these are the things that take into account. But what happened? What happened to her? I can tell you what happened. Somebody close to her said, "Oh, you're not a best-selling author. You're not a best-selling author. That's for those people that are famous." And this voice got in her head, and it made her feel bad about herself. And she listened. That's the part that really bothered me. Now, whether she wants to use that quote unquote title or not, that's strictly up to her. But letting somebody get in your head like that, that's just all wrong, if you ask me. So it can be a fear of rejection. It can be a fear of failure. It can be a fear of success. What do you do if your book does really well and now the spotlight is on you? I didn't even think that was a real thing the first time I heard of it. I thought, who on earth would be afraid of success? And then it happened to me. I started realizing, hey, those who are called to success, there's a responsibility with that. You have to kind of get your stuff together when you're successful. And there is that fear of being found out, that those thoughts in your own mind that tell you you're less than, don't listen to them. You are not an imposter. If you've written from your heart and you've told the truth, and you have something to share, that's not being an imposter, that's being authentic. And maybe you have a fear that you are not enough or you are unworthy of success for some reason. That will really hold you back. Maybe you have a fear of making mistakes. That happens too, right? I mean, I've made my share, and I want to say this area is real for me because I didn't grow up in the environment that it was okay to make mistakes. I was punished for mistakes, and rightly so. I mean, I'm not criticizing my parents, but it wasn't okay in my world to make a mistake. You looked foolish. You might embarrass your family, all of those things. But I learned later that mistakes are a part of learning, that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. To quote John Maxwell, I'm so grateful for his book that I read. And it comes in 3 versions, by the way, if you have somebody in your life that you want to give a gift of meaningful education. It comes in a children's version, a teen version, which I have taught at our Global Youth Initiative events, and it's an adult version. But if you're afraid of making mistakes, get that book and start working on your mindset. Sometimes we have a fear of getting lost in the weeds, kind of lost in the shuffle somewhere, and that's real too. In fact, I've been helping a lady. I'm so proud of her. She's an amazing human being and has been through a lot. And it took us a while to take her idea and make it I want to call it a workbook type book. So you work through thoughts and feelings and things, right? So she gets the book. We finally get it available on Amazon, and she's already off to 100 other things. And I pulled her back for a minute and I said, hey, well, wait a minute. What are you going to do now that your book is finished? She's already off. She got lost in the weeds. And I get it. That may be her fear of success or being called to do what she set out to do. You know, when you disappoint yourself, when you make a promise to yourself and you don't fulfill it, it erodes your self-confidence. You don't want to do that. Stick with it. Do what you set out to do. The fear of putting out a ton of effort and still not making it. Boy, that one's real. And it's not just putting out the effort, it's putting out the money. It's doing the thing over and over again, trying so hard and not getting to where you reap the benefit.